Welcome back to the third video, everyone. So this one will be the conclusion to the argument that I have been making against rights, liberties, and freedoms for homosexuals. For instance, we saw the polling of that Anteater show. It was literally 5 seconds of two males walking down the aisles holding hands. And that got pulled because we're teaching children that what? Homosexuals exist? I don't see how that's indoctrination. There is a big difference between indoctrinating, like Lindsay from Queer Kids stuff, and saying homosexuals exist, which is what we saw in that episode of the Anteaters. A big difference. Now, I watched a documentary about the KKK, and they are indoctrinating their children. Do you think that it would be appropriate for me to go in and say, I think the government should intervene and you should not indoctrinate your children to be racist, xenophobic, homophobic, and bigoted? I would say no, that would not be appropriate of me. Ultimately, you can teach your kid to be all those things all you want. And when they end up growing up, the fact of the matter is when they become teenagers, they start making decisions of their own free fruition, whether it goes against the parents' philosophy or not. But this, I think, to be the one rule of thumb, the most important job of a parent, the one job of a parent you should never fail at. The one job of a parent that will never end is to never stop loving your child. They may not be homosexual, but being raised by a KKK family, they may grow up to be a liberal. Are you going to disown them at that point? Or are you going to continue loving your child even though you disagree with them on some philosophical or ideological points? Same with atheism. If somebody is raised in a vastly fundamentalist religious household, and they say, I've done my research, I've looked into all these things, and I've come to the conclusion that I just cannot believe in God. I think it's important for the parent to continue their duty as a parent, to never stop loving their children. They don't have to agree with that decision. And they can cry about it at night if they wish, that, oh my gosh, my son or daughter is going to hell because they don't believe in God. But ultimately, you have to respect one's choices and the paths that they go on, who they are. And I would dare to say that you cannot choose what you believe. This seems to be a difficult concept for some theists to grasp. But I could not sit here and tell you I believe in God. It would be a bald-faced lie. Either I do or I don't. And the truth of the matter is I just don't. I don't believe there is a God. I don't think there is anything there. I've seen no substantial or sufficient evidence to support that idea that there is a God. I cannot choose to believe in God. It would be a lie. And I think that would break one of the 10 Commandments, would it not? I'd be lying not just to everyone around me, but I would be lying to myself ultimately. And to anything, I think, to thine own self be true, I just have to speak the truth on it. And is no, I don't believe in God. I don't. And to say otherwise would just be a lie. I am a seeker of truth, so I don't want to do that. I don't want to lie. I don't believe in it. Nor do I think somebody who is Christian, somebody who believes in God, or somebody who is Islamic that believes in God, or somebody who is Jewish that believes in God, could say that they don't, because clearly they do. And if they don't, then they're lying to themselves and the rest of society, to their peers, if you will. And if there is a God, they're lying to the God that they think is there, or they don't think is there, they're just saying he is. Belief is not a choice. It's involuntary as well. So far, to this day, I have not seen one argument that would substantiate that homosexuality is immoral. I think it is immoral to teach, to sexualize children, period, whatever kind of sexuality it is. It's irrelevant. It's immoral, and to me, morality is subjective. But even that given, I would find it immoral to sexualize children, as there are negative consequences, observable, measurable data that would suggest that there are negative consequences to sexualizing children. So I would find that to be immoral. But I have not yet heard a moral argument that would suggest that homosexuality is, well, immoral. I would like that explained. I would like to know why homosexuality is immoral. What about it makes it immoral? We do not have observable, measurable data of negative ramifications and consequences of homosexuality. It does not exist. And you can make a hypothetical argument, which is a fallacy, by the way, that if everyone was homosexual, then there would go the human species. Well, you'd be absolutely correct. There would go the human species. It would dissipate significantly. But to that remark, I would say, for one, that's hypothetical. Two, that doesn't exist. And three, even if it did exist, just because one is homosexual doesn't mean that reproduction is off the table. You don't need science to figure out that all you need to do is introduce semen into a female's womb or vagina to inseminate an egg and create a zygote. You don't need to be heterosexual to do that. And you don't need science to do it either. You don't need to do surrogacy through the medical field. There's the slang interpretation of it, where they call it turkey bastering it. Implying that the semen is in a turkey baster and the woman squirts it within her. So again, I have never heard a rational argument against homosexuality. Not one. Not a single one. Yet alone how it's unhealthy. I don't see how it's unhealthy. And I don't see how it is a mental disorder. And yes, I have been diagnosed with a mental disorder. I was diagnosed with bipolar type 2, which is basically severe episodes of depression and hypomania. The bipolar type 1 is the one that has violent mood swings with hypermania. As well, I have also been diagnosed with generalized panic and anxiety disorder. These were inherited from my mother. My biological mother had some mental illnesses, and I'm not going to get into it because that is an entire lecture on psychology of mood disorders. I'm not going to get into it. I was diagnosed with those back when I was in second grade, as I was already displaying. I was already displaying at a very young age depressive episodes. I had already was talking about suicidal thoughts at the age that I was in second grade. I was at 7 years old, I was beating my head against the wall and saying I wish I was not born because I was afraid to die, because I did not believe in God by that time. But I didn't want to exist either. It was too depressing. And that's when they said, I think there's something wrong here. This is a very young child to be talking about that kind of thing. But that is a disorder because the depression and the anxiety does inhibit me from doing things that I need to do, such as go to work, take a shower, brush my teeth, eat, sleep properly. Homosexuality does not do any of those things. It is not a mental disorder. So that is the question on the table. It has not been identified. So I think I have addressed several things here. Is that one, the National Socialist is highly comparable to the last standing theocracy, the very theocracy they think that threatens the Western world and why it is they do what they do, and their answer in response to that is not a theocracy, but basically the same thing through bureaucracy, which is totalitarianism, dictatorship. And they do very, very similar things to the same thing that they think that threatens them for the same reasons they think that threatens them. So I've essentially successfully compared the National Socialists to radical jihads, to radical jihadism. And I think I have successfully demonstrated there's a significant difference between somebody pandering to the statement of a totalitarian government versus somebody who wants to keep a democratic society or a constitutional republic, which values rights, liberties, and freedoms and steers away from authoritarianism. And I've also posed a significant philosophical question. What is the negative moral ramifications of homosexuality? This I cannot find, and I think I've made a good argument to say that I do not think, given everything that I've stated, that homosexuality, that the thing that is degrading to the moral fabric of society is indoctrination, but homosexuality itself is not deterioration of the moral fabric of society. I think you could easily make an argument that cultural Marxism is a detriment to the moral fabric of society, which I would agree, which a lot of the indoctrination that is going on is very much cultural Marxism. But I would also agree that fascism is a deterioration of the moral fabric of society as it dehumanizes others. Somebody is no longer, they are seen as subpar humans. They're no longer seen as a human being. So that is the question on the table, particularly for Mr. Adolf Hitler and Chick Micken. What is it about homosexuality that deteriorates the moral fabric of society? Why is it morally incorrect? And when we talk about indoctrinating children, are we talking about teaching kids gay sex? Because, like I said, if that's the case, I will gladly stand beside you and say that is wrong. Are we talking about simply informing children that sometimes two people of the same gender like each other in a romantic way? That this is a part of the world that we live in. Tolerance, acceptance. And how is that degrading or eroding the moral fabric of society? It's not keeping you from your nuclear family. It's not doing that at all. It's not keeping you from indoctrinating your children, as we could have seen if you watched the documentary, which I doubt you have, but if you've seen the documentary about the KKK, them indoctrinating their children into an ideology of bigotry, homophobia, racism, and xenophobia. And I would also like to remind the religious people that if you're going to call yourself a Christian, and I think it's amazing that it takes an atheist to point this out, an anti-theist, a gene-gnostic, anti-theist nihilist, to point out that Christian literally means you are a follower of Christ's, of Jesus Christ's philosophy. And it has been pointed out to me by multiple theists themselves that there are atheists that are more Christian than some people, than many people who themselves proclaim to be Christians. So I will continue to speak out against the proponents of the left that wish to perpetuate the ideology of Karl Marx and cultural Marxism and communism, or the social justice warriors, the progressives as we call them, the authoritarian left. I will continue to speak out against them because I do think that they are a threat to the moral fabric of society. They too engage in dehumanization. But I think it speaks volumes. Have I not treated any alt-right person that has commented to me, no matter even if they use pejorative language, with respect? I think I've done that. So I would love to hear the response. I would love to hear a legitimate moral claim as to how homosexuality is eroding the moral fabric of society. How homosexuality is wrong. How I would really love to also know how homosexuality is detrimental to one's health. How is that possible? How is that possible? Please let me know. I fail to find any evidence of that, and I would love to know. So I have made my assertions, I have made my argument. I can't wait to hear the rebuttal to it. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe. Hit the bell button on any channel you're subscribed to. And with that, I'm out. One last thing before I go, I would like to address the notion to Chick Micken. I do not understand why you must categorize yourself as alt-right, considering a lot of the ideological or philosophical political standings that you have. I don't see why somebody in your particular position needs to put themselves under a label or some kind of cubbyhole as something like the alt-right or an ethno-nationalist. I don't see why you can't simply be a normal, average American, just an American, a Christian conservative American who happens to be homophobic and racist. There is nothing wrong with that. I do not think you need to align yourself with such ideologies or such groups. So, I'll leave you to your thoughts. Link should be in the descriptions of videos, and I will try to look for the philosopher who argued that we should not use science nor religion to define homosexuality and a moral stance. I will look for that video and leave it in the link in the descriptions of the 3 videos. So I hope you've enjoyed this journey. I certainly have, and there's certainly more to cover, as this is like peeling apart an onion. And it is quite fascinating to learn about these different ideological positions that people hold. And certainly is like a philosophical trip. Certainly a very interesting rabbit hole indeed. As I said already, like, share, subscribe, comment, hit the bell button on any channel you're subscribed to. That out.